Today we're going to start the urinary system. Brief introduction. Basically this slide is the introduction and then there's a diagram, and I'll show that same diagram a couple of times. Urinary system consists of your two kidneys. The main function of your kidneys is to filter blood. Sometimes you hear it said it cleans your blood. There's two ureters then that drop from each kidney, and the urethra that basically transfers nitrogenous wastes outside of your body. So basically the job of the urinary system is to filter and get rid of waste. It does that, and when it does that, it helps maintain a normal concentration of water balance. So it's very important for salts or electrolytes and water balance. So like a kidney stone, you might have a buildup of a salt or calcium deposit or something like that. It regulates pH and fluid volume, and we'll talk more about that next class period. And it also helps them with red blood cell production and blood pressure. And that one you probably don't hear as much about. Here's a diagram. We're going to look at this a couple of times, so I'm going to talk more about that as we get into this next part. So the kidneys themselves are a reddish-brown color, bean-shaped. So when you buy kidney beans, they're called kidney beans because of their shape. Approximately 12 centimeters long, and it has a very tough fibrous capsule. So if you've dissected a cat or taken zoology, if you've cut into that kidney, it is a solid structure and it has a tough outside capsule. Location, it's called retroperitoneally on either side of the vertebral column. So basically it's kind of in your lower back area. And when we look at the diagram, we'll talk more about it. Between the 12th thoracic vertebrae, so T12 is what you'll see on the picture, and 3rd lumbar, so L3, with the left kidney typically sits a little bit higher than your right kidney. Connective tissue and adipose tissue then help to hold the kidneys in place. So here you can see that the left kidney sits just a little bit higher than your right kidney. So T12, this is your 12th thoracic vertebrae, and L3, so lumbar, lower back, you can see they basically sit, for the most part, in that area. So if you look at the bottom of your rib cage, the top of the kidneys start above that, and the bottom fall below that. Anything else I want to point out right away? Adrenal glands sit on top of your kidneys. Renal deals with kidneys, so renal vein will be blue, renal artery will be red. Here is each ureter that's going to drop out of the kidneys, and then there is your bladder that's going to hold or store urine until you get rid of it, and then the urethra is the very short opening that actually drains the urine. In each kidney then, so today we're basically going to talk about structure. What's where, what are terms. So there's a medial depression in the kidney called the hilum that leads to a hollow renal sinus. So I kind of wrote sinus cavity, it's kind of hollow, where your blood vessels, nerves, lymphatic vessels, and ureter all enter. So this renal sinus is an area of a large amount of activity. Inside the renal sinus is the renal pelvis, and that's divided into major and minor calyces, and then there's a small papillae that project into each of those individual calyx. When we cut open the kidney and you look inside, there's a renal medulla and a renal cortex. The renal medulla is going to hold these pyramids, or renal pyramids, that we'll look at. The renal cortex surrounds the medulla and then it's going to kind of fill in, or it dips down in between the renal pyramids, and where that drops down, it's called renal columns. So we'll look at that on the diagram. C, very important. The functional unit, the actual filtering part of the kidney, is the nephron. So the actual part that does the filtering in your kidney is the nephron, and that will be very important. So if I look at these, you can see the renal medulla, basically if I'm looking at, is going to have a darker brown color. So this would be the medulla. The cortex is this lighter color that's going to be on the outside. When I look inside, each one of these triangle-looking pieces is a pyramid. So these are your renal pyramids. And then your renal capsules or columns that go down are the parts that dip down here in between each pyramid. Renal pelvis is right here. Renal sinus is right here. And the renal sinus is this part where we talked about the arteries and veins enter inside that part. And that's probably the part I want to point out. Inside of the kidneys, then you have nephrons, which is basically every little individual part that is going to collect and filter, actually do the filtering in your kidneys. So the nephrons are very, very small parts on the inside. Kidney's job regulates the volume, composition, and pH of your body fluids. That includes your blood, so water, how much water is in it. It's going to remove metabolic waste from your blood, a lot of nitrogen-based waste, urea, and that's what gives urine kind of the smell that it has. The kidneys also help control the rate of red blood cell formation. So red blood cells are made in your bone marrow. However, your kidneys make or secrete your erythropoietin, which is important in forming red blood cells. They regulate blood pressure and volume by secreting renin, and this affects the volume of blood that you have, so that's going to affect your blood pressure. When Kayla has some of her blood, and I don't know, but low blood pressure, basically she does not have enough blood volume. So drinking all the Gatorade and doing the IV thing before a basketball game, it puts in more fluid into your blood system, which actually would increase your blood pressure. Also plays a small role in activation of vitamin D. So blood vessels, you're going to have your renal arteries and your renal veins. Arteries take blood away from the heart, so they're going to take blood away from the heart and to your kidneys. So arteries, renal arteries, bring blood to your kidneys. As these arteries go into the kidneys, they branch, and I know some of you actually cut into your kidney when we dissected the cat, and it was just full of the little stretchy red tubes. That would have been your branches of these smaller arteries. So then they each have their own names, and I probably won't have you label these on the test, but as they branch, they have different names. Interlobular arteries, arcuate arteries, cortical, radiate arteries, and then afferent arterioles are the smallest ones that are going to connect to your nephrons. So to sum that part up, there is a lot of blood vessel activity in your kidneys. Because they filter the blood, it has to have a lot of those branches for that to actually happen. So then veins are going to go back to the heart, so they're going to take blood from the kidney back to the heart. Same thing, it's returned through a series of vessels that correspond with your arteries, and then the renal vein is going to hook up or attach to your inferior vena cava, and then that's how it will get back to your heart. So here, if I'm looking, here's your main artery that comes in. It's going to branch, and then you're going to see interlobular, does mean basically in between lobes. Arcuate is going to come around on the outside. You can look at the picture and see how they branch, but like I said, I probably won't have you label that on the test. Renal artery, renal vein come in and leave side by side. There's also lymphatic tissue that's there. I would like you to know that the afferent arterioles, these small arterioles, are what actually coincide with your nephrons. So that you should know. When we actually start looking at the nephrons, I think I'll stop here so that I have a little bit more time. So we'll stop here and move on to nephrons next.